Hey there, guys. So this is just an intro for today's episode. It's on Independence Day because this will get out the 4th of July. Isn't that funny? So I mentioned in my films I watched last month rather, that I had an episode planned where it was 2 episodes planned that were just gonna be me. So that's what today's episode will be. But the other episode I had planned will hopefully have a second guest. So yeah. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of At the Movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and yeah, as you can tell by the intro, episode will be on Independence Day and its sequel, Independence Day Resurgence. So this is just going to be me talking about why these films aren't that great, honestly. And I'm going to sort of be talking about them together because they're not really worth talking about separately because they are. I mean, they're not the same film, but they're more or less are. They're just got some slight differences, and I don't particularly care for either of them. So, Roland Emmerich is a filmmaker who these are the only films from him I've seen, and if these, I'm just looking at his other films he has made. So, 2012, White House Down, Moonfall was his most recent film that came out this year, which was not well received. I'm just looking at his films right now on his Wikipedia page. Oh, that's right. He did the Godzilla film. That's right. I remember that was that wasn't very well received, was it? I remember hearing about Independence Day and Roland Emmerich as a filmmaker from I believe that it would have been the Nostalgia Critic a long time ago now. It would have been before, it might have even been before I was in high school. It was definitely before he was before the whole change the channel controversy had come out about him. And I remember I watched his episode on, it would have been Godzilla, and the intro is him basically being going through Roland Emmerich's sort of last couple films. So it was Stardate, then it was Independence Day, and then Godzilla, which was the film he was covering in that episode. But yeah, and so I think that was the first time I heard of these films. I think it must have been, and this original Independence Day is a real sort of classic of the 90s. It's sort of a classic 90s action film, and like a lot of classics from the 80s and 90s, I don't get it. There's certain action films from the 80s and the 90s that really hold up the test, and really still are great films. Stuff like in the 80s you had Predator and Die Hard and those sorts of things, and then in the 90s you had stuff like I haven't seen Speed, but everybody still loves Speed, and Die Hard 3, which everybody still loves. Terminator 2 is a great example. And yeah, so I was thinking that, going into this, I was thinking, okay, so this could, I figured at best I'll probably think it's decent. I won't think it's an amazing film or anything, but I'll think it's sort of an enjoyable watch. And I don't think I'm giving away a lot by saying I don't care for it. I would, in fact, I would go as far to say it's overrated for the, because and it's not even, I feel like a lot of people because some people really love this film, and I just have to assume it's because of childhood nostalgia. It's because it was seen by people who were kids in the 90s who grow up thinking that all these 90s action films and 80s action films as well, to some extent, are actually great films, and that they don't make films like that anymore. And it's just sort of good films? Because there are a ton of still really great films being made. People really want us to go back to the 80s and 90s of filmmaking, and I'm like, really? We just want a ton of schlocky shit action films every year for a decade? I don't want to do that, because I think the thing about films now is I hate people who are like, oh, films, filmmaking is not as big anymore. It's not, as everything's sort of all Hollywoodized, and everything's still this sort of thing of this is where all these, like, oh, everything's just about the Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything's gotta be a franchise now, and it's just like, and what's the point of these films? And it's just like, well, what's the point of Independence Day? Like, as a film, there's no point to it. It's not saying anything. It is just military propaganda for 2.5 hours, and that is sort of what the second film is, honestly. Like, they're both military propaganda for several hours too long. Just like, and these are only films you can make in America, because the title Independence Day really says, oh yeah, this is, an American film, because Independence Day is this thing. And honestly, I just don't care for them. I don't really care. I don't really get why people love them so much. Like, the first one, I guess I'll try and sort of what's the word I'm looking for here? Sort of put my thoughts about the first one sort of out at one thing, but to be honest, I really just don't. They're both bland, boring, not really anything interesting action films, and like, I like good action films. Like, I'm a big I do really enjoy action films. A lot of the time I'm able to sort of put the whole I'm very much able to watch a lot of action films and not really care about the story or anything like that, because basically I'm not one who necessarily has a problem if a film doesn't really have a point to it, or it's not really saying something, it's just telling a story. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I just need what the story they're telling to be good. And Independence Day is not. Independence Day is not that. What it is just it's basically every Michael Bay film before Michael Bay was really making film. In fact, like, I think this came out the same year as The Rock, which is Michael Bay's only good film. It's the only good film Michael Bay has done to date that I've seen. I've only seen from Michael Bay The Rock, and I think the Transformers films. I think that's all I've seen from him. But, The Rock is the only good one. Everything else is just they range from fine to abysmal. Honestly, like, most of the Transformers films are terrible. Like, a lot of them really just don't work that well as films, and I don't really care about, most of them, because they're just not saying anything. They're just toy commercials for 2.5 hours, and there's not even decent characters to get me invested or anything in any of that. It's just like, if you're gonna do action films for 2.5 hours, just make me invested in the characters and the story. And Independence Day suffers from that problem, where I do not care about anything that's going on. And I mean, the sequel is worse. I don't think the first film is bad. I think it is perfectly fine. But, like, the second one is terrible. I will say that. I do think the second one is actually really bad. Whereas this first one it's like fine. Like, it's a perfectly fine film that people like for some sort of inane reason. I mean, I guess the plot of the first film is that aliens invade the planet, and on Independence Day there is a counterattack by the president and the army. And then the second one is just the same thing again, but the film is shorter by about half an hour, which I appreciate. I do appreciate that the second one is shorter. It's the only thing it really has above the original. Both are not very great, though, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, and this first film was written by Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin, who I'm just looking at right now to see what they've done. So they've basically just done a lot of Roland Emmerich stuff, and Geostorm, yeah, that wasn't well loved. So yeah, it's not good. It's yeah, but This has got a very large 90s cast. I mean, you got Will Smith in as the lead. Will Smith isn't that great of an actor, honestly. Like, even like when he's good, like he's good in Fresh Prince in that sort of comedic role. I liked him in King Richard, but it has sort of put a bit of a sour taste in my mouth post Oscars, and hearing more about Richard Williams. So it is kind of weird seeing Will Smith in things now, considering I've learned a lot about how terrible of a person he is. More specifically, how terrible his marriage is. Honestly, I really do not care for Will Smith in this. He's a massive talent, but he's not particularly great. He's just a name, that will sell a film. Yeah, and apparently they offered it to Ethan Hawke, but he turned it down because he thought the script was terrible, and I don't blame him, honestly, because I think Ethan Hawke is much better than Will Smith, and he didn't need to do this. Yeah, we've also got Jeff Goldblum as sort of the second lead in it. I really like Jeff Goldblum. I've touched on this in my in the Jurassic Park episodes we did. Well, the first one, I think, if you go check out the Jurassic Park episode we did, I talked about Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum. That's my terrible Jeff Goldblum impression. Yeah, no, I do really like Jeff Goldblum, though. I think he's a lot of fun. And actually, I did talk about him in my Thor episode, which came out last week. Again, check out that episode. But he's just fine here. I think this was sort of, he's not a particularly great actor, I will say. I don't think Jeff Goldblum is particularly great. He's perfectly solid at sort of that role, at that sort of archetype he's meant to be playing, but he's not like a major, he's not like the biggest, he's not like a major dramatic actor. It's like, oh, we want to get this major awards contender in this film. We're just gonna get this guy in because he's a name and people, like him. Like that sort of thing. Of he's not he's a name. But he's not like, he's not the sort of major actor who, like, if you want a great dramatic performance from someone, you're not going to be like, oh, I want to go get Jeff Goldblum to do this, that kind of thing. It's sort of more just, he is, a name who will sell something, but you're not going to get an awards contender from him, that kind of thing. I think I made my point clear. But yeah, and just looking at, it's got Bill Pullman as the president, and he's in the second one as well. Also, I just was thinking that Will Smith is not in Independence Day Resurgence. I guess he just didn't want to do it then. I guess must be the thing, is they were like, I don't want to be in this film, as they I guess he was like, nah, this ain't for me, dog. And so Will Smith's character is killed off in the second one, and that's his stepson in the second one, played by Jesse Usher. But we'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, Bill Pullman is the president of the United States of America, and he's in both of these films. They're like, I don't like, honestly, I'm naming actors, but I can't really remember anyone, and I watched these films like a couple of days ago. I really just did not care. I don't think any of them are particularly great actors in this film. Honestly, I don't think anyone does anything particularly amazing. Let's see, we've got Randy Quaid, who is like the sort of eccentric pilot who says they were, kidnapped by aliens, and then at the end they sacrifice themselves. I think they're the one who sacrifices themselves at the end. Yeah, it's Randy Quaid's character who sacrifices himself at the end of the film, and what's meant to be a big sort of dramatic emotional moment, and it's just, I didn't really feel anything. I was just like, oh, he's dead now. Cool. Yeah, yeah, I just didn't really care about what was going on. And there's some other actors in this first film. That there's Judd Hirsch, there's Mary McDonnell as the First Lady, all these other people. That I don't really remember any of these characters. They're such bland, basic, undefined, barely written characters that I'm just like, what is. I'm not sure why I'm meant to care or be invested in these characters, considering that there is nothing for me to latch onto, really. They're just sort of blank ciphers. They're just sort of like characters who they're sort of fitting archetypes, but they're not even good portrayals of those archetypes. They're just, oh, okay, so we need like the sort of the sciencey nerd guy. Okay, that's Jeff Goldblum. We need like the badass war hero. Boom. We got Will Smith. We need the crazy old guy. That's Randy Quaid. We need some women in there. Will Smith. He needs to have a partner, and they get married before they all go up into battle. But yeah, they're all just characters that are written, but not particularly written well. They're just sort of there to achieve a certain perspective, and that's true of the second one. To be honest, I don't think any of the acting in either of these two films is particularly great. They're just fine. Well, the acting ranges from fine to just bad. Like, there's certain performances in this film where I'm just like, what is that? Why? Who said this was okay? Like, in the second one, there's this character whose name I don't remember, and who's played by someone who I don't remember because I don't care enough to be like, oh, this is what... I'm not bothered enough to be like, oh, this is who was playing that role, because I don't care enough. I'm not invested enough to be that interested about these characters. But he's like sort of the nerdy, sort of scared one, and then he like at the end he's shooting the things, and then he gets scared because he got grabbed by a thing, and it's just, yeah, just performance wise, this film just doesn't work in that category at all. It fails spectacularly. There's just no riveting characters. There's no one who's particularly well written, nobody to get invested in. There's just nothing. There is nothing in terms of characters or emotional arcs to be interested in, and that's a big problem when there's a sacrifice at the end of the first film, when, like I mentioned before, the mental guy, Randy Quaid, sacrifices himself to save the day. It's just like, well, first of all, I knew that was coming. I had seen that clip before, so I didn't care anyway. And just honestly, I wasn't that emotionally invested in the ending of that. It's hard because a lot of action films, it's very hard for me to get emotionally attached to them and to be like, oh yeah, that was sad. Yeah, that wasn't like, oh, I was really, invested in that moment and I was crying when the character died. I'm just like, no, that character's dead now. I don't care. Honestly, I'm just like, cool, someone's dead. There's a sacrifice. Then like films will really need to get me emotionally invested and make me care. If they're gonna do a suicide in it, I need to be like, yep, this is, I need to care enough to be like, oh, someone committed suicide. That was very well done. I was emotionally into it, and this film just doesn't have that, honestly. But I know I've been going on about how much I just don't care for these films, really. Just some quick positives before I go back to talking about why I don't particularly care for other films. They look great. The sort of technical aspects, the special effects for the first film, and the first one, I give it more. I'm quite impressed at how well the effects in the first film hold up. Like, I would have figured it's been, 26 years? Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, 26 years since the first film came out, and it still looks pretty good for, because a lot of CGI from the 90s, hell, even films made a few years ago, don't particularly hold up because I don't like. There's a lot of like sort of special effects from like the 90s, and I talked about this in my Jurassic Park episode where we talked about the special effects in that first film and how it more or less holds up. There's like a couple bits where I can tell what is puppets and stuff and what is not, but like it's not really that much. Honestly, I really don't think there is a like it is relatively well for me anyway. I don't know about you guys if you went home and if you guys decided to watch it, what you would think, but it all more or less holds up for me. Like nothing really sort of jumps out to me when I was watching it of like, oh, this is dated a bit poorly, but I also wasn't that massively invested in these films, so maybe I just wasn't paying as much attention to it because I just don't care enough to be like, oh yeah, like maybe that was the problem, is I wasn't that invested enough to be like, yeah, this film, like this, like it, but like that's the thing though, is like, because I think there's nothing like coming to mind sort of right now where I'm like, oh yeah, that CGI wasn't particularly good. I'm just sort of like, this was, special, CGI, and it still looks pretty decent, like it's not amazing or anything, but it is like, it still works, is the point I'm getting to, really, is that none of it looks particularly poor. And the second one looks perfect. What was that? The second one looks fine. Like I just sort of wasn't invested enough to really notice poor CGI, because I just sort of am like, whatever. Like it's like, and that's the problem really with these films, is I just didn't care. So when stuff was happening, I was like, oh man, what's gonna happen? The second one was weird because they sort of get to a point where I'm like, okay, this should be wrapping up soon, and then I check and I'm like, there's still an hour of the film left to go. It's the point where, for those who haven't seen it, or maybe have and just don't remember it, which I don't blame you, it's not particularly worth remembering, then when the characters go to the big mothership, which I do like the design of how like the spaceships and everything, and I do like the design of the aliens. Actually, I will give them that. The aliens actually look pretty decent. I do think the aliens look pretty nice. The part where they are going to the where they're going to the ship, when the humans in the second one, they're going to the ship, and I sort of at that point, and they're planning to attack it. At that point, I was sort of like, so this feels like the beginning of the third act, honestly. And then I checked the time and it's like, no, there's an hour of the film left, and I was like, shit. Because I was just at that point, I'm just like, come on, movie, please be over. And I was honestly like, maybe, man, the film has really been going by fast, because everything feels like it's getting to that point. I guess I'm getting to the end, and I checked, and it's like, nope, you're only halfway, and I'm like, oh, and then like, and then they're in the ship, and they are, sort of, well, yeah, they're in the ship, the sort of the big mothership, and they're like, okay, so this is what we're doing, and they're going around, and they're trying to, do stuff, and then, they get pranked, they were suck it in, boy, and then they're in a bad place, and they're like, oh, this is not good, this isn't what I want it to be, and they're just like, this isn't good, yeah, and then, their ships are sort of hit with, like, I guess, an EMP blast, I guess, is I guess sort of the equivalent they're going for there. And they're like, yep, okay, and then the ships are all falling, and they're like, oh no, oh boy, and then they go to be like, okay, well, let's just release the missiles, we'll sacrifice ourselves, and then they didn't notice some things, I guess, falling down to stop the missiles, the bombs from doing that, and they're just like, oh, they didn't go off, and I was just like, oh, okay? And then we're expected to believe that the characters are dead, despite the fact that two of the leads are in that group. Okay, like, I just don't... And again, it's hard. I hate fake out deaths, honestly, because it's just like, especially in major blockbusters, I'm like, oh, this is the main character. Oh, they're in a situation where they could die, and oh, are they dead? Are they not? We don't know. I'm just like, oh, just get on with it. Just get to the point. I know they're not dead. It's like in Black Panther, where they throw his body off the where he is killed, quote unquote, defeated is the appropriate word, and he's defeated by Killmonger, and we're just gonna be like, oh my god, Black Panther's dead. Ugh. That will be part of my complaints when I do Black Panther in a few months' time. That's just foreshadowing. But, like, I just wasn't that, invested about stuff, and then they get to, like, they get, and then some of them fall out of the ships, and I was just like, that doesn't, because, like, the ships, like, crashed, well, jets, I guess they're jets, really, fall, and they crash, and they blow up, and I'm like, oh, I guess, did they use the, like, did they do that? Like, did they, like, I was sort of like, didn't they, like, do something to the, sort of, mechanics, like, controls, because I'm just thinking about this now, actually, didn't they do stuff to the controls that would stop them from working? I was like, I just realized that now. But also, I'm questioning the logic of films about aliens from space attacking the Earth, where Will Smith is a pilot, and he's not slapping Chris Rock. Well, that was a terrible joke. Oh, that was a bit in poor taste, but I'm keeping that in. But I mean, just like, these films just don't really do anything, honestly. They don't do anything to me. That was the problem, as I was just bored. I was just waiting for them to be over, because I'm only doing them for this stupid joke. At least when I did Orgazmo for episode 69, that is a good film that I'm happy to watch. I just wasn't, like, I don't even hate the first one. I think the first one was fine. I just think the second one was they're just rather bland and just sort of boring, and like, and just sort of like, just finish, just end. I'm really not bothered about any of this happening. I just want the film to be done. Just finish, just wrap it up, just be done. Just end my, suffering. Because the first one is longer, and I felt that length. I was like, fuck. So just take forever, just finish. And honestly, throughout both of these, I was like, sort of only really, kind of not paying attention too much. Like, I was watching and sort of seeing what was happening, but every now and again, I'd just be getting out my phone, just being like, oh, what's been happening here? Because I just didn't care enough, honestly. And that's the problem. I think with these kinds of films, I need to be invested enough. And if I'm whipping out my phone and being like, nah, it's time to check, yeah, that's just the problem, isn't it? This is a 90s film, and people like it because they saw it in the 90s when they were kids in the 90s, and they're stupid because it's not actually that great, and it's a film that exists. It's not a good film. Like, it's not a great film or anything that exists. It's a fine film. Honestly, I think people who love this film don't know what they're talking about. Honestly, I'm not one to be like, people can't, I'm not one to be like, oh, film, like the thing is I usually, as best I can, try to be open-minded about film stuff, and I'm usually one to say that people can enjoy whatever films they want. Like, people's favorite films can be whatever. That is not my problem. It's just that my problem is that people who seem to love Independence Day and love films from the 90s and 80s, usually grew up with them. Like, for example, I'm a massive fan of The Goonies. It probably won't hold up particularly well on a rewatch, and that's, like, fine. But, like, at least I'm aware of that. Like, I think there are some people who genuinely believe Independence Day is a great action film, and it is not. It is fine at best. It just is not engaging to me. I just didn't care about any of it, and, you know, it's just fine. It's like, you know, I'm not invested in anything. You know, the action stuff looks nice and everything, but I just don't really feel anything because I'm not invested in the characters. I'm not like, oh, I want to see what happens here. I'm just like, okay, stuff is happening, cool. There's shooting, pew 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 pew. People are dying. Oh, there's aliens, pew 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 pew. Aliens are dying. You know, I'm just sort of like, that's that. And then I'm like, oh, sacrifice. And then, you know, and the second one, oh, the characters have died. And then we find out, oh, no, they haven't. And then they escape. And then there's the big alien queen. And I'm just like, okay, cool. But, I mean, Aliens did this better, honestly. It's not even the same thing. It's just Aliens did an alien queen thing much better, honestly. Just, yeah, these are just films that exist that I don't particularly care for. So I'm just going to put a rating on these and then wrap up. So the first Independence Day is a 6 out of 10. Like I've been saying, it's not a bad film by any means. I just don't care. I just didn't connect with it. It is a film that exists, but it's also a film that I don't particularly care for. It's perfectly fine. I think a lot of people who love it just overrate it because it was a thing they grew up watching, and like that's just my whole take on that. And then Independence Day Resurgence is a 4 out of 10. I don't care for it too much. It is weaker though. The characters are even weaker because you don't have that Will Smith or Jeff Goldblum sort of presence in it. I mean, you do have Jeff Goldblum in Independence Day Resurgence. He just isn't as good. And yeah, just the film is just weaker in a lot of ways, and I don't particularly care for either of them. So I hope you enjoyed this one. It was interesting, I think. And yeah, check out all the previous episodes. Check out last week's episode where I covered Thor. That's a much better episode than this because it's a pretty decent one. Check out just check out everything else I've done. Basically, it's pretty good. I think some of it's good anyway. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see all of you guys in the next one. Goodbye.